Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Visual Mind podcast. As always, you will see footage from past painting videos of mine on the screen so that there's visuals to go along with the audio that I am recording. It doesn't really go with the audio in the sense that it is not dependent on it. So you can listen to this as a podcast. You don't have to look at the screen, but if you want to see something visually on the screen, then that's the reason why it's there. So today I wanted to talk about why you should stick with an artistic or creative project. Actually, this is a very impromptu episode for me, as most episodes are, let's be honest. And I was just sitting down. I was actually painting something, and suddenly I had an epiphany and thought about how I can structure my own marketing a little bit better and communicate a little bit better. And then I sat down with my journal and I was actually brainstorming ways on how I can market my art courses better. But in that process, I realized that a lot of these points can also be applied to any artistic project. It doesn't have to be an art course, but it can. It doesn't mean that you have to buy a new project, but I will link, of course, all of my products and courses in the description box for you. But I don't want to make this entire episode just a sales episode for my courses because that's not really that useful to most people to listen to in an episode. But while I was brainstorming all of these things, basically reasons why somebody should buy an art course, I realized that these are basic reasons why you should do your art project. Or also, if you are the type of person, and I know a lot of people in my audience are, who have bought art courses in the past, but then you weren't able to finish the course, then these could help you maybe. This could give you a little bit of a boost and just a little bit of a shift in your brain, hopefully, so you can hopefully convince the little gremlin in your mind that doesn't want to do it to actually keep on going with it. It can also be any other type of course. A lot of things here can apply, and it can also be a large painting that you've started, anything like that. So with all of that out of the way, I'm just going to try to look at the notes that I've taken and then apply them to a more broader scheme. But when I first thought about why you would buy a course, I thought about the fact that it gives you a head start. It tells you where to start. You learn a specific set of skills. It is structured. Somebody had already thought it through for you, and you just have to follow along and you will learn a specific set of skills from it. And you don't have to stick with the overwhelm that often comes with trying to learn something new, and can just follow along and go with the flow, essentially. So if you have started any type of art course, any type of tutorial, or anything else where somebody teaches you something, then I think that it is a really good point that you will learn something while you don't have to scramble for information. You don't have to search the entire internet for answers because somebody has already decided which information is useful and which isn't. So you can just do your project, learn the skill that you wanted to, and be done with that. And it's going to be a hell of a lot easier than having to find all of that stuff on your own. I know this one applies mostly to courses and any type of instruction, but I'm gonna have some more points that are gonna help with any type of art project. The second thing that I noted down was that it helps to prevent overwhelm, which I've already kind of covered, and you're just following something that somebody has already planned for you. Then with art courses, you can also learn a specific style instead of just copying reference pictures. So if you are the type of artist who really struggles to find their own style or stylize something, then if you invest in somebody else's art course who has a developed style already, then you will of course learn that specific style. And if you like that, you will have something good to come from that. Also, that one applies to art courses mostly. I have to admit, probably the first few are pretty centered around art courses, but stick with me because I have a lot more that also go with any other art project or with creating art generally and why you should create art. Then the next one is that if you have an art course, or it could also apply to any art membership, or for me personally, it also applies to me going to Taekwondo training where I have a trainer. So the point that I have is you don't have to battle your mind because somebody helps you stay in a positive mindset and leads you through any challenges that may arise. So for example, with exercise and stuff like that, if you do it on your own, you might do stuff that can actually hurt you. But if you go somewhere where there is an instructor, they're going to help you through that process. If it is an art course, then you will have stuff that you struggle with, especially mentally, which is something we don't really think about. But I think the majority of the battle is actually mental when you don't stick with things. And here somebody already tells you how to keep going. At least if it is a good instructor, they will tell you what to do if you lose motivation or if you lose the courage, basically, because art requires a lot of courage. It's something that I'm gonna talk a little bit more about later. But basically, any coach, teacher, instructor will help you through these things. And it is very helpful to have somebody else that leads you through that, whether that's a friend or somebody that is more on the professional side of things. Then the next thing, and this applies to any type of artistic project, is that you get a break from your stressful day-to-day life. You don't have to make any decisions and you can just enjoy the flow. That can also be a good reason to maybe do a coloring book or maybe also even build a puzzle. Something that is active where you do something but you don't really have to decide every single thing. Any type of tutorial or anything where you copy something, a paint by numbers, for example. These could be really good things if you have a stressful day-to-day life where you have to make 1,000 decisions a day and your head is already spinning after the day. You might be very inclined, and I know that from experience, to just sit down and scroll through your phone or watch TV. But especially with scrolling, for example, you have 1,000 or even more probably little small decisions that are added to your plate there, because whenever you watch short videos, for example, then you decide with each one of them, do I want to watch that or do I want to swipe that away? Do I want to give it a like or not? So you have even more decisions to add to your plate. It can make it even more stressful, even though in the moment it's going to give you a dopamine hit, it's going to feel really nice. It's just distracting you, and afterwards you will feel even more depleted. And that is something that I have had happen so much in my life, and now I'm coming to terms with the fact that that is probably also one of the things that went into the fact that I burned out at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, because it was just too much. I had too many decisions to make, and it made it harder and harder to actually stick with stuff because there were thousands or millions of micro decisions to be made every single day. And the more of these you add, the worse it gets. So here, if you're doing an artistic project, you get to hit the pause button. And this is something that I think is actually a rebellious act in today's society, because you get to spite all these big media companies that are really battling each other for your attention. All of them just want your attention because that is the main product. If something doesn't cost anything, then you are the product, usually. That is something that people say in marketing. And I think it applies to a lot of things. For example, when you're scrolling on Instagram, it doesn't cost you anything. So in conclusion, the product is you, your attention. There's there's ads on, I don't know, every third Instagram reel or so, and that's how they make money. Then the same thing with watching Netflix, for example, that actually costs something, but then also you are there and giving your attention, and then you pay for that. And they obviously raise the prices over and over again until it's actually really lucrative for them. It doesn't matter, but all of these big media companies, whether it is YouTube, you're probably listening to this on YouTube, unless I have put my podcast on the other platforms again, but also the other platforms as well. They're all battling for your attention. But if you sit down and you paint an art piece for, I don't know, half an hour, 10 hours, it doesn't matter. You're actually spiting that, this development in our society where everything has to be super fast and everything has to be an immediate result and everything has to be picture perfect and there's more and more and more. You're actually hitting the pause button and you're actually taking your time to do something for just yourself. And I think that is absolutely beautiful in our today's society. I don't want to say that over and over again, but that's kind of what it is. You're actually spiting the system in a way. I think it is a bit tragic that you have to do that you have to rip yourself away quite forcefully sometimes, especially when you're struggling with media addiction, which has definitely been an issue for me. But when you manage to do that, something absolutely beautiful happens and the world becomes more colorful. And that is something that I've noticed in the last few months, that when I spend the time on projects for myself, or when I just go outside for a walk in nature and just breathe in very slowly and do all of these more mindfulness tasks, the stuff that you usually avoid when you are living a very fast-paced life. When you actually do those things, then the real world becomes much more colorful. When you stop escaping into fake worlds, for me personally, I played a lot of Sims. I also watched a lot of videos about The Sims, and that was really detrimental to me. And I didn't notice that because the videos themselves, they were upbeat, and I was creating the beautiful life that I was dreaming of in this fake world. But instead of actually building the life in reality, I was doing it there, and I didn't even notice the beautiful things around me anymore. But then now I notice when I actually sit down to create, whether it is for my business or for myself, just doodling on the side, I notice that the colors become more saturated again and my brain is calming down a lot. So this can help you in so many ways that you might not even think about at first. Also, if you're doing an art course, for example, you will learn new techniques and styles, and these can be incorporated in your art from then on. So you will, for example, learn how to paint a specific art piece, but that doesn't just mean that you learned how to paint that one specific art piece. It means that you learned a whole new set of skills. And then every single art piece that you create after that could be, what's the word? Influenced? Yeah, it could be influenced by that. It could have certain elements that you learned. That doesn't just happen with an art course. Also, if you're doing personal projects, for me, for example, if I doodle in my quote unquote ugly sketchbook, the sketchbook that is just low pressure, off camera doodling, when I find something there that I really like and I realize, oh, I like drawing the clouds in a really fluffy way, then that will probably go into a lot of my landscape paintings from there on out, and that will develop my style further. And I've also realized that when I learn from other artists, for example, when I do master studies or tutorials of others, then I learned their techniques and learned something that I might not have considered. Maybe they mix their colors in a different way, or they just stylize something very differently. And I might not apply all of the things that I learned there to my own art style, but I might incorporate some of the things. So my own art style is basically a little collage of all of the things that I like from other people's art styles and that I personally find beautiful in my life. The next point is that you learn problem solving from a new perspective, and that can help you in all areas of your life. I find that I've learned so much from my own artistic journey that has helped me in so many other areas. An example that I like to give is my own Taekwondo practice, because years ago, I would say maybe before I started my channel, let's say maybe 8 years ago, the biggest issue that I personally had back then when I was in my early 20s was that I couldn't stick with something. I saw all of the people around me and they had hobbies that they'd been doing for years. They had some stuff that they'd been pursuing for years. I had friends who wanted to do something professionally that they had always been interested in. And I really, really struggled with having something that would last more than just maybe 3 months. I think that was the cutoff point for me. At first, a new thing was really exciting. I was in the honeymoon phase. I wanted to do nothing but that one thing. And then after a few months, or maybe even just a few weeks, it became boring, it became exhausting, it became hard, and I didn't want to stick with it anymore. And so I dropped it, because why pursue a hobby that you don't have to stick with for longer than it is fun, right? So that was always my thinking there. But honestly, when I started my art channel, and for a very long time it was a hobby for me, it didn't turn into a business until a few years ago. When I first started with my art channel, it was really a project where I learned to stick with something. I posted a video every single week, and I did that for years and years and years. There was a break here and there, obviously, but nothing very long. I did it consistently for the most part. And that really taught me so much, because I didn't think that I was able to do that. And later on, when I got diagnosed with ADHD, I realized, oh yeah, that's one of the reasons why I struggle with sticking with things. Because people with ADHD, they tend to have these very short-lived, for the most part, hyperfixations, and then they usually drop them, and they often have issues with finishing stuff. And I really taught myself how to finish things, because if you have to post a video every single week, you have to finish at least one art piece every single week. And every single time I finished something, that taught my brain, hey, actually, I can finish things. I can stick with things. And then I did that for many, many years. And I realized, oh, yeah, I can do something long term, even if it gets hard sometimes. Obviously, that honeymoon phase ran out. And after a few months, my channel got increasingly harder to pursue and stick with. But I did it anyways. I always tried to still make it fun and enjoyable, tried to keep the pressure as low as I could, and that way I actually managed to stick with it long term. And now coming back to my Taekwondo practice, when I first started that, I think almost 3 years ago now, so I've stuck with that one too for a while. I took so much of what I had learned from pursuing my channel and applied that to Taekwondo. Because especially when it comes to exercise, there's gonna be times where you're gonna be sick or you're not gonna feel good enough to go there, especially if it's martial arts. You're gonna need a lot of energy for it. So if you have a migraine, you're really gonna think about whether you wanna go there or not. Sometimes you hurt yourself and then you can't go for a while, or lots of things could happen that could prevent you from going there. And so the skill that I learned, that I think is one of the most important skills that I've ever learned, is how to continue something or pick it back up again after you got off the horse for a while. It's not about always staying on the horse. It is about how to get back up. And that is the number one skill. That is the skill that I use with everything, with my art, with exercising, with my mental health, with whatever it is. Literally, it could be anything. It doesn't matter. It could apply to laundry. It doesn't matter how long it's been since you've done laundry. The most important skill is to do it again. It is completely useless to beat yourself up and think about, oh, if only I hadn't stopped, then I wouldn't have big piles of laundry everywhere now. If only I had kept up with it. If only I had done it consistently. If only. That is a completely waste of time or waste of energy in your brain. I know our brains love to do stuff like that. But what is far more important than beating yourself up is to continue again and to realize that this is a skill that applies to literally every single area of your life. Something that if you practice this, it's gonna help you so much. So if you have an art course, for example, that you have started, you've already paid for it, you've already started it, but then you never finished it, I don't think it is a bad thing that you never finished it. I think it's an incredible opportunity because now you could teach your brain, hey, I could go back to that. And you don't even have to start all over. I don't care if you already forgot the first half. Just continue where you were. You're gonna catch up. And if you don't, well, you at least tried. So you can just learn to pick something up again and then finish it. It doesn't matter if you started that art course 3 years ago. If you still have access to it, go in there, look at it, continue where you left, be proud of yourself because you finished it. Even if it's a book or something and you don't remember the first half of the plot, but it was actually somewhat enjoyable book, pick it up again. Continue to read it. It doesn't matter if it's just half of the plot because you forgot the first half. Just the mere fact of picking it up again and sticking it out is going to be such a valuable skill for your brain, such a good shift in your mindset. And it doesn't even matter if you then enjoy the process, if you enjoy the course or the book or whatever it is. As long as you celebrate yourself for picking it up again and finishing it, that is the thing that we're trying to do here. Later on, if you want to do another art course or read another book, then you know, okay, I didn't like that because it was a horror book and I don't like that genre, or I didn't like the writing style, then you know, okay, next time I will buy a different book and I will read something different. Or with an art course, you didn't like the way that the course was edited or you didn't enjoy the instructor. Okay, next time you will buy an art course from a different artist. So you will learn something from that and you will still have the achievement of having finished that. So I hope that really motivates you to pick something, and please do not pick everything that you've left off. Just pick one thing that you started and never finished. Even if it's just a small art piece, a doodle that you started while you were on the phone, but then you never finished it. Pick just one little thing and start there and finish that. And if that gives you a good feeling, and it should, because you should allow yourself to celebrate that, then you can pick another thing to finish. And I think that is going to give you tremendous skills for a lot of things in life, and that is not limited to art. Another thing is that you will learn how to deal with the nasty inner critic, because you will stick it out, hopefully, and the inner critic, depending on who you are and how loud it is, but I think most of us have it, it will probably pop up here and there, and it will tell you a bunch of things. It will tell you this is not worth your time, your result doesn't look good, you're not actually learning anything here, this is boring, let's do something else, let's watch that movie that we've been wanting to watch for a while. It's going to try to distract you, it's going to tell you that you're tired, it's going to tell you that you're hungry, you're going to need XYZ before you can get started because you don't have white gouache and the instructor is using white gouache, but you only have watercolors, so why would you do that? And instead of just using white acrylic paint, for example, that could also work, you let the inner critic win and then don't do anything. Usually that's what happens. That happens so many times. I don't want to tell you that you should judge that that's happening, because that is incredibly normal. That is your brain hijacking you. That is the older, more primal part of your brain. It wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you the same. It really likes homeostasis, which means that things will more or less always be the same and always end up in the same place. It does not want you to grow and go out and do something that is scary. So, of course, your brain is going to rebel. It's going to have a million reasons. You don't want to buy that art course because it's too expensive for you, but then you spend the exact same amount of money on something else. You don't want to exercise because today you feel tired. Or another fun example, you don't want to exercise today because you washed your hair yesterday. And so now that doesn't make sense. You're going to exercise and then you want to wash your hair on the same day, but you washed it yesterday. So why would you exercise today? Like, we can come up with the most ridiculous reasons. And I'm speaking from experience here. This is universal. It happens to every single person. If you are human, then this is going to happen to you. Some people have it worse than others, but the inner critic is going to be there and you can count on that. You can depend on that in some way, shape, or form, unless you are extremely mindful, extremely spiritual, and dealing with your brain extremely well and have all of the resources, which happens very rarely. Unless all of these things are true, then you're gonna deal with your inner critic. And by the way, my inner critic is currently telling me that nobody cares about this, that nobody's gonna listen to this, that it is redundant information, whatever. It's gonna be there. And every single time you do something active, you're gonna have voices in your head that tell you to do otherwise. And why is that a good thing? Because you get to learn how to deal with them. When I record this podcast episode and then I actually upload it and actually post the link to it, I get to tell these little voices in my head that I don't care, that I don't believe them, whatever it is. They can scream at me however they want. I will not let them defeat me. And that will make them a little bit quieter next time. If I am really loud and scream back, and I would encourage you to do that, and I tell them that what they say isn't true, and I match their tone basically. So if they're really mean to me, I get to be mean to them. And if they call me names and call me something, then I get to call these voices something too. And I can defend myself, because if somebody was nasty to me, then I would defend myself. So if parts of my brain are doing that, I'm gonna defend myself. And every single time that I do that, the part of me that defends myself is getting stronger and stronger, because my brain trains to do that. And the paths that lead there, like the neurological pathways, they get stronger and stronger. And every single time it gets easier. For me, it is not that hard to post a YouTube video because I've done that so many times. But in the beginning, when I first started, I had my heart was beating right out of my chest. I had so much anxiety about it. I was so nervous every single time. Every single time I sat down to record a voiceover, I dreaded it. I didn't want to do it. And it has gotten so much easier over the years. That doesn't mean that these voices aren't there anymore. Like I said, now that I'm recording a podcast episode, they're here again because I don't do that many podcast episodes at the moment. So that is something that happens every time you step even so very slightly out of your comfort zone. And I think people do not expect that creating something, especially if you're just sitting down to paint something, people do not think about the fact that that takes tremendous courage, because your brain is going to ask, hey, do you know if that's gonna look good in the end? Do you know if that's worth it? I don't think it is. Your result doesn't look like the one the instructor showed. Your result is lacking this and that. You really messed up that part of the painting. Like, this voice is gonna come up and tell you all of those things, and it's gonna take a lot of courage to then say, no, that's not right, I don't believe you, or it doesn't matter, whatever, I learned something. So whenever you talk back to this, it's gonna give you skills. Again, these apply to all areas of your life, but I think that especially creative projects challenge our brains in ways that other things might not. If you're just typing numbers into an Excel spreadsheet, these voices might not be as severe as when you are creating something and you don't know if the end result will look good. So especially when I'm painting, I often have these things, have these thoughts, and the inner critic comes up, and it matters tremendously how you react to that. And when you stick it out and actually say, okay, it's not perfect, I can see 5,000 flaws in this piece, but I'm gonna post it anyway, or I'm gonna put it on the wall, I'm gonna show it to somebody, or I'm not gonna do that, but I'm still gonna continue creating something else. When you actually say, that's okay, it's flawed and it's okay, and maybe you didn't learn anything from that art course that you took, or from that, I don't know, whatever course it was. Maybe you went to a yoga instruction thing and you didn't really learn anything because you already knew all of that stuff. But still, you went, you stuck it out, you did that, and then you learned, okay, this yoga instructor is not for me, and next time I'm gonna pick someone else. And you also learn how to deal with all of the stuff that will arise in your brain, and it will help you with your mindset. So there's so many things here that we don't even consider. And while you're doing all of that, while you're creating stuff, a fun thing happens. It actually makes you a more interesting person. I don't know if I'd ever considered that, but it has come to my attention lately that somebody who watches a lot of TV, scrolls a lot, plays video games, just somebody who escapes reality a lot, aka me a few months ago, this person doesn't have the best stories to tell. It's not that interesting of a life. These things don't really leave marks in our lives, at least not positive ones. It is not really something where you can connect with others a lot. Yes, you can send your favorite cat video to a friend, but wouldn't it be better to paint something for them, like paint their favorite animal? I think they would appreciate that a lot more than getting sent 500 short videos a day. So it makes you a more interesting person. It gives you stuff that you can share. It gives you stuff that you can be proud of. It flashes your personality out more. So if you have more hobbies and do more active things, you will actually have a more interesting life. And I think that is worth a lot, because I often think when I am really old, at the end of my life, hopefully I will be really old, and I look back, I really like to ask myself the question, what will I be proud of? What will I regret? What will I be glad that I have done? And I don't do that in a condescending way where I blame myself for stuff, but I look back and then I ask myself, okay, when I'm old, will I be glad that I watched this reality TV show? Or will I be glad that I overcome my fear of, I don't know, learning oil painting and actually stuck that out and learned that and created 500 oil paintings? Which one are you more likely to regret? And this can be a little bit cynical, maybe a little bit morbid, but I think that we live in a lot of denial, quite a lot, especially me. I know when my mental health gets a little bit worse or I'm not the best that I can be at a certain time, then I know that I like to be in denial quite a lot. Especially when it comes to us not being here forever. That is something that we're in denial of quite a lot unless we get reminded that our time here is limited. But usually we don't like to think about that. And I think it can actually be a beautiful thing to think about that if you do it right. So in the way that I do it, I imagine myself really old, looking back, and I'm proud of my life, and I'm happy at the things that I did, the decisions that I made. And then I imagine, which ones would that be? Would I be happy that I exercised, that I went out, that I socialized, that I created? Would I be happy that I have, I don't know, thousands of art pieces that I have created and I can say, okay, that didn't exist before I created it. So these are probably going to be the things that I will be proud of. I mean, I can't tell the future, obviously, but now just me imagining that really, really helps me when I have the option to either sit down and waste my time with something mindless that involves the screen usually, or the other option would be to sit down and create something. And then I ask myself this question. I usually create something from that. So that is something that helps me a lot. Please don't use that against yourself. You don't have to do something productive every single second of your day. I think that, I don't know, 90-year-old me would not want that either. 90-year-old me would be proud of all the peaceful moments that I had too, and not just all of the things that I produced. So please think that through and do that from a really loving perspective and not from a perspective of shame and guilt. Because if you guilt trip yourself or shame yourself, you're just gonna invoke the parts of your brain that are just gonna put you back into the denial spiral, and then you're gonna just do the things that are easy in the moment, because guilt and shame are very, very unproductive. And even if you made yourself feel guilty for something, then try not to feel guilty about that. So this can be an endless cycle, and you can only break it with being kind to yourself. And that is something that I didn't want to hear, that I didn't want to learn, but I have definitely learned now, and I hope I can stick with that as much as I possibly can throughout my whole life, basically, that when I am kind to myself and come from a loving perspective as much as I can, that is gonna improve every area of my life. And I've seen it with my art as well. It improves my art massively. If I am really kind to myself, my art actually looks a lot better than if I search for all of the mistakes that I can still fix. Now, if all of that self-kindness type of stuff and all of the positive stuff doesn't fully resonate with you, doesn't fully pick you up, you're maybe in a little bit more cynical state of mind right now. I get it. I can relate. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes all the positive yada yada stuff doesn't help. So now I have another perspective for you. Maybe this one could work. Remember the person who told you that you can't do that. The person who told you the art piece is not good enough. You are not creative. You don't have a single creative bone in your body. Tracing is something that you shouldn't do. And this art piece lacks this and that. The texture is wrong. The proportions are off. Remember the nastiest teacher, parent, sibling, whoever it was. Remember those people who told you you shouldn't pursue that and art is a waste of time. All of those cynical, angry people who in some way or another, whether it was literally or just through their actions, told you that you can't do something. Think of those. Wouldn't it be really, really fun to spite them? To have the most beautiful art pieces that you are proud of because we are practicing getting into a better mindset. Eventually, you will hopefully get there. You will create a ton of art pieces. And the teacher who told you that you are not creative, not good at that, imagine them. Imagine showing them those 500 art pieces that you've created and all of the stuff that you've done in those pieces. Show the teacher, like in your mind. I mean, if you can meet them, that would be great. But in your mind, you can control everything, so probably better. For example, I had a teacher once in college who told us that tracing is basically cheating. It is a bad thing. I like to imagine taking all of the art pieces where I used tracing as a tool in one way or another. I like to make a collage of all of those art pieces and imagine myself showing these art pieces to that teacher. Because that teacher said that if you trace art or you trace anything, like it applied to everything. It was not about copying other people's art. It was about you are not allowed to trace your references or whatever it is. You're not allowed to do that, period. I like to imagine showing these art pieces to that teacher and just have a smug look on my face and tell them, look at this art piece. That art piece looks really nice. That art piece got 2,000 likes on Instagram. I don't know, whatever. And just show them and tell them, hey, I've done this professionally for a while now. Or you haven't done it professionally, but you still stuck with it, like you've created 500 art pieces. And maybe even show them the worst one, like the ugliest one, where the tracing really didn't work. Show them that and say, I still like it. I still enjoy it. I still had fun. Or maybe this piece is ugly, but I don't care. I still love it. You can't make me hate it. Like the spite could be such a good factor if you're doing it right. Again, you have to do it right. Don't use this as another thing to burn yourself out. That could backfire a little bit. But I really like to imagine that that art teacher. And also the other art teacher, like one of the art teachers in college, I think she gave me a C on an art piece. That was probably the worst art grade that I ever got. And I am still bitter about it, but it kind of fuels me in a way because I think of her and I think of telling her, hey, actually, I'm doing this professionally. And I even have a sketchbook with ugly art, a sketchbook that is just dedicated to making ugly art. And in spite of all of that, in spite of the people telling you that it has to look good, I'm still making the ugly art. I don't care. I don't care if you think that it's ugly. I like it. I have fun with it. Maybe it is ugly. Maybe I think it's ugly. Does it matter? Does it matter whether it's good? Because as long as I'm not selling the art piece, really there's nothing, no reason why it has to be good. Absolutely no reason. So spite can be a really good motivator there. If your parents told you to not do art because it's a waste of time, do it anyways. You're an adult now. You can do whatever you want. If your parents put all of your siblings, how do you say that? They pinned you against each other. I think that's how you say it. Like if it was a big competition, whose artwork would end up on the fridge because only one of the kids is the best artist, and usually it wasn't you, but your sister's art then ended up on the fridge. You're an adult now. If you're listening to this, I'm going to assume you're an adult. You have walls, probably. Maybe a pin board, maybe a fridge. You can put up your own art. You can put up the ugliest art just to spite those people and say, hey, this is my ugliest art piece that I've ever created, but I'm putting it on the fridge because I made it and I had fun and I say so. I decide to put that up. Maybe it's your best art piece, maybe it's your worst, maybe it's something in between, maybe it's something that means something to you, but maybe nothing to another person. You can decide these things now. And nobody can come in and say otherwise. Nobody can tell you you are not allowed to do that. I mean, of course, if you share your space with other people, there's going to be room for discussion here. But you probably have some partial space that is just for you, so you can put something up there. You get to decide that. And I think that's beautiful. It can be an act of rebellion, but it can be a beautiful one. So that is, I don't know if I still have good points there. I had so many ideas here. There's also parts about getting personalized feedback, connecting with other artists, stuff like that. But I think I have mentioned the most important points that also apply to other art projects that maybe aren't art courses. But that being said, if after all of this you think, hey, Visual Mind sounds like a really good teacher and I would like to learn from them, I would like to do a course from them and do the entire course, hopefully, then I will leave a link to my website with all of my courses in the description box below. It also has a link to my membership, and on my website I also explain what the difference there is between my more refined courses and the more real-time authentic membership classes. So if you are interested in that and you want to learn which one would be a good fit for you, then I will leave a link to that. If you have at any point in the past started one of my courses, so you've already bought it, so I'm not selling you anything here in this sentence, you've already started it but you never quite finished for whatever reason, I'm not judging you, maybe consider picking it up again. Watch just another few minutes and see how it goes. Be kind to yourself as much as you can. I know it's not always easy to do that. It can be such generic advice that is sometimes really hard to follow up on. I hope that this episode helped you to get into a better state of mind, helped you to actually gather the courage to create, because it does create courage. Please never minimize the amount of courage that it takes. People make it seem so easy. You just sit down and paint like you did as a kid. But as an adult, it's actually not that easy. It is actually, I would say, almost a state of rebellion. I think if you're doing anything creative today, that is a massive win, a massive success, and you are rebelling against all of those big organizations that are vowing for your attention, all of those that want you to mindlessly scroll and be a zombie. You are rebelling against that and you are making something for yourself. And that is such a beautiful thing. I hope I can see you again next time. Let me know what kinds of topics you would like me to talk about. And until then, goodbye.